Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 7. First video. Mr. Bennet's property consisted almost entirely in an estate of 2,000 a year, which, unfortunately for his daughters, was entitled in default of heirs male on a distant relation. Okay, let's first understand this part. I think the second part of the paragraph is pretty okay to understand. 2,000 a year, that's great. So first of all, we have to take a look at entailed and in default or default, and then heirs. I'll give you the words, and even so I think it's a little complex, right? So for example, first of all, entail. Entail is the definitions I have here in our Quizlet. To limit the inheritance of to a specified succession of heirs. We should go to heir and then go back to that, right? So what is an heir? Keep in mind you spell heir, H-E-I-R, but you don't pronounce hair as you would be tempted to be pronounced. And I think it's good because then you don't confuse with hair. I almost don't have it, but hair, you know, this is facial hair. Well, but it's heir, right? Take a look. A person who inherits or has a right of inheritance in the property of another, right? I put a very nice picture of the queen there, and I think it's her son. I don't know anything about the queen, I'm very sorry, but I think it's her son. So it's her heir, okay? So what is entail, right? Entail is to limit the inheritance of a property to a specified succession of heirs, okay? I stopped a little bit because I was thinking if I said entail. I didn't say entail, right? It's entail. So basically, I will say that my wealth will go to my son, not to my daughter, or vice versa. Okay, right. So you already know heir, and keep in mind in default. Just default would be different things, but the expression in default is due to the absence or lack of something. One more time. Because of the absence or lack of something. Through the failure of something. Okay? Take a look at this very nice sentence. Though it was only a speeding ticket, Janet was imprisoned in default of paying the fine. So, because of the lack of paying the fine, she had a ticket to pay, right? And in default of paying the fine, she went to prison. Okay? One more very nice example. In default of concrete evidence, the jury was obligated to acquit the defendant of murder. Acquit is to say it's innocent. There is that very important case in the United States, that very important trial of O.J. Simpson. Well, I'm not going to tell you the case, the lawsuit here. But I remember that the defense lawyer brought a pair of gloves, you know, and the idea is the gloves were at the crime scene, right? And in a very dramatic moment, the lawyer gave O.J. Simpson, who was the guy who was being accused of committing murder, and gave the gloves to O.J. Simpson, and they didn't fit. They didn't fit his hand, right? And then his motto was, the lawyer's motto was, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Telling the jury, right? Look, the gloves don't fit, so you must acquit, all right? I know I went very far in the example, but O.J. Simpson's case is a very interesting one. And the sentence is nice to remember. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. If the gloves don't fit my client, you must say my client is innocent. By the way, in the end, he was acquitted. Well, going back. In default of concrete evidence, the jury was obligated to acquit the defendant of murder, right? Okay, so because you don't have, let's put it this way. Now take a look at the sentence again. Mr. Bennet's property consisted almost entirely in an estate of 2,000 a year. I don't know if you remember, but 2,000 a year is half what Mr. Bingley has, and much less than what Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy, I don't know. Do you remember what was Mr. Darcy's, like 20,000 something? Mr. Darcy is much richer than Mr. Bingley, right? Well, so Mr. Bennet's property consisted almost entirely in an estate of 2,000 a year, which, unfortunately for his daughters, was entailed in default of heirs male. So in case the guy didn't have any male heir, the land, the property was entailed. So it would mean, remember, to limit the inheritance, it was entailed on a distant relation. Got it? So somebody, not the daughters, because of the laws of inheritance of England at that time, somebody else, somebody distant, would inherit the land, not the daughters. Why? Because they didn't have any male, the couple, right? They didn't have any male heirs. Okay, but then you may think, but her mother's family must have given them some money, right? The mother must have brought some money. Yes, and then we have this part. In their mother's fortune, though ample for her situation in life, could but ill supply all the deficiency of his. Okay, I didn't put ill in our Quizlet. Because probably you know ill as being sick, right? He is ill, he is sick. But if you supply something ill, so you ill supply, ill here is being acting as an adverb. It's like illy, but illy would be strange. So if you supply something ill, or you ill supply something, it means that you barely supply something. You supply, but almost not. Okay. Though ample for her situation, whose situation is my question for you? Answer. So for Mrs. Bennet's situation, right? She has a certain kind of fortune. For her situation, it's very okay, right? It's one person, all right? Plus, she has her husband, all right? And her husband has a property of 2,000 a year, right? So it's ample. Abundant is another way to say ample, right? Ample for her situation. So this fortune could but ill supply the deficiency of his, because once his fortune is lost for the daughters, the mother's fortune could barely supply the lack of the father's. Her father had been an attorney in Meryton and had left her 4,000 pounds. That's all she had, 4,000 pounds. She had a sister married to Mr. Phillips, who had been a clerk to their father and succeeded him in the business, and a brother settled in London in a respectable line of trade. So let's just understand who was Mr. Phillips. Well, Mr. Phillips was, I don't know, Mrs. Bennet's brother-in-law, right? This guy, Mr. Phillips, had been a clerk to their father and succeeded him in business. So he kind of inherited the business. You know, he used to help the guy. He married his daughter and succeeded him in business. The village of Longbourn was only 1 mile from Meryton, a most convenient distance for the young ladies, who were usually tempted thither 3 or 4 times a week to pay their duty to their aunt and to a milliner's shop just over the way. Thither, keep in mind, probably it's a word that we'll never use because it's very formal, it's a little bit archaic, right? I have a picture of a man pointing, you know, because thither is just there, you know, to that place, in direction of that place, right? You know, the idea is, actually it was a very nice grammar. I just remembered now, yeah, there was a grammar in the past. The grammar was, you had here, hither, there, thither, right? And the idea is, you know, like the difference between in and into, on and onto. It's like on one you have movement and the other you don't, right? So you say, I am here. And then you would tell a person, come, not here, come to here. You know, that would be the idea. So that's why you would need another word. You would say, come hither. She is there. But can you go to there? But we don't say to there. In the past we used to say thither. Can you go thither, right? Can you come hither? But of course nowadays those words disappeared, right? Another important thing is the milliner, right? A milliner is a guy who makes hats, right? Keep in mind, in the fashion of that time, hats are very, very important. Okay, so let me read it one more time now. The village of Longbourn was only 1 mile from Meryton, a most convenient distance for the young ladies, who were usually tempted thither 3 or 4 times a week to pay their duty. Duty here in the sense of respect, right? To pay their duty to their aunt and to a milliner's shop just over the way. So they would visit the hat shop 3 times a week, right? The 2 youngest of the family, Catherine and Lydia, were particularly frequent in these attentions. Their minds were more vacant than their sisters', and when nothing better offered, a walk to Meryton was necessary to amuse their morning hours and to furnish conversations for the evening. I have to give you the word furnish. You know furniture, right? Furniture is like, I don't know, sofa, the bed, cabinets and things like that, right? But you can furnish your house, okay? If you furnish your house, you put furniture in your house. So it's kind of specific nowadays, but originally furnish is to provide with anything. You know, I think I have here, take a look, to equip with what is needed to provide. That would be the original meaning for furnish. So why would they go there to Meryton? Because they wanted to amuse the morning hours and furnish conversation for the evening. They would talk in the evening about things they had seen during the morning, right? It would provide conversation topic. And however bare of news the country in general might be, they always contrived to learn some from their aunt. At present, indeed, they were well supplied both with news and happiness by the recent arrival of the militia regiment in the neighbourhood. It was to remain the whole winter, and Meryton was the headquarters, right? Keep in mind that militia, I put the First, contrive, okay, is like a device, plan to have. They could contrive to learn something. They would always find a way to learn something from their aunt. Just to give you an example, she contrived ways to amuse the children. Okay. Keep in mind, militia is like I don't know, a group of soldiers, but they are civilians, right? They're trained to fight in a war.